Hi folks, Luke Wassam here with Sargent Pipe Company. First off, I'd like to thank you for your interest in our pipe clamps, pipe spinners, or for the purchase of them. We wanted to make a short little video here. We had quite a few people call in, kind of frequently asked questions video. We just want to cover the basics on how to use this, how you should use it, some tips and tricks, different things like that. So I hope you enjoy.
Right here we got a 412 clamp, and when you set this up and you got a turbine pump, what you're going to have to do is set it down in here. A lot of guys will clamp to the bowls on threaded column. That way they don't have to try to hold the bowl. Now, if you got a bowl that's bigger than 10 inch or it gets bigger than about a 14-inch diameter, you won't be able to clamp on it. So what we're going to do is show you, we've got the clamp sitting on here. And you can see the guys will typically block up above their casing. If you've got a concrete pad, a lot of times you can sit directly on top of that. But here we're up on, they don't have concrete on this particular casing yet, so we're going to go ahead and show you. We're going to set the bowl in here and we'll adjust up to it. And so we like to typically have the back of the stand towards the truck. It just seems to work better for the operator. We'll have you come on in here and see this. These guys will slide this up. There's 3 different locating holes. You find the hole that best fits the bowl. You want to get in between your opening on your bowl when you're setting a bowl. There's 2 adjusting nuts similar to a vice grip. You can adjust them up. And they've already adjusted this, so you want it so you got to push pretty hard on this. And typically, what you want to do is you want to try to get between these webs, as you can see on a bowl here, so that the webs are, so you're not clamped directly on a web. That's how you install it. We'll show you here in a little bit how you take this thing back out. We'll adjust it also for column. The next step here.
When hooking your pipe spinner up, the hydraulics are very quick and easy to hook up. There's 4 quick connects located at the back of the pipe spinner as seen here. 2 larger ones, 2 smaller ones. The only ones you need to actually use the pipe spinner are the larger ones. The 2 smaller ones are for auxiliary, for hoisting the pipe spinner up and down. Some guys choose to use it, some do not. It's up to you guys. I would recommend using it. It sure makes it easier, you know, as far as going up and down. You don't have to let go of it and go over to the truck to raise it up or down. In this clip, we're going to show you how we thread together the oil tube. Some guys choose to thread it by hand. Some guys will do it with the pipe spinner. It doesn't really matter. But we're going to show you here. At this point, we're lowering the oil tube and going to go ahead and start it by hand. You should always start a thread by hand. Never use a tool. You just don't know, with wind blowing and things, that it could misalign, and those pipe spinners have enough power that when they do go to thread it, it will thread it quite a ways with it cross threaded. Then you guys are going to be out here with a file fighting this for hours. So always use lube on all threads, not just for the fact that threading together, but for the ease of taking the pump out 10 years down the road, 30 years down the road. The thing you got to remember is the pipe spinner will turn the pipe fast enough that it does create heat. So make sure you use pipe dope. In this clip, we're going to show you guys how to do the final setup on your pipe spinner as far as for installing a pump. So you can see he's got his oil tube already started together here. And if you look on the pipe spinner, these guys have had this pipe spinner since it was new. You can see he's got a little modification there. He extended one of his handles. But the thing you're going to pay attention to here is, with that lever on the left pushed all the way in, you're going to want to adjust your clamp pressure. So he's got it pushed forward and it's detented in position. He's got that thing running about 1300 psi. Now, to adjust that clamp pressure, you use the dial on the left, the lower left there. There's a screw. Now, if you see It's also marked up on the top. There, all the dials and everything's marked. That is how you set your clamp pressure. Now, as far as how tight to get that, you want it to just don't slip. The knob on the right is for your motor torque. You want to set that so it sets how tight you get it. Now, when you set this thing up, you want to make sure that it is pulling perpendicular to that pipe sticking up there. You want that chain laying as horizontal as possible. That way your pipe spinner does not want to twist. You know, twisting on it is not good for the pipe spinner or for the pipe, because it'll tend to gouge in on corners. Okay, at this point we're going to go ahead and show you how we torque up the oil tube. And if you watch in this, you're going to see his pressure gauge move. He will get down here and show you how this works. But as you can see, the pipe, he's pulling on that there, and when he does, that gauge will climb. So in order to set your pressure, when you stall out the pipe spinner, that's when you're going to have your max pressure, and that's when you're going to want to adjust that. You can use this thing as a torque wrench. You can see it's got very little resistance right there turning that oil tube. But when that oil tube bottoms, it will spike that gauge up, and at that point, that's where you want to adjust how tight you're going to get it. So I know in this video it doesn't show it very clearly, but that is where your adjustment comes from. There's one other adjustment that you can make on this pipe spinner. There's a dial above the top plate there, or right below it, it's a knob, and we don't necessarily, it's set from factory, but if you adjust that, it adjusts how fast that thing opens and closes. Here we're going to show you one more time how a threaded piece of column is threaded together. And you can see on this particular truck, they tend to hang this thing overhead. Doesn't mean you have to. You can take it off to the side, or if you got a swing arm, sometimes they'll build those so they can swing them out of the way. It doesn't really matter, but the thing to remember is hook both chains, clamp it, dope your pipe, put some kind of a thread sealant, some sort of a thread lubricant on there, and then go ahead and spin her together. When your pipe gets spun together, you're going to want to make sure that this thing is at the proper torque that you expect it to be. They're pretty good. Hydraulic pressure is pretty consistent. Once you get there and you're sure it's hitting it, it should consistently repeat itself. Another thing you must keep in mind when threading together is you have to give it slack in your cable up above. If you don't, you'll be lifting your pump out of the ground, and if you're lifting a 100,000 pound pump up by the threads as you're trying to turn it, it's going to damage your threads and you're going to be very aggravated. In this clip, we're going to show you how to, once the head is installed, how to take it off. First thing you do is open your clamp like you normally would for a piece of column. It's fairly simple. All you got to do, as they'll demonstrate here, is you take the pin out of the back of the clamp there, safety pin, and you slide your pin out, your long pin out, and all you got to do is take that out of there, which slides out, and one or two guys can get it out, or you can get a hold of it with your truck and pull it out. He just tends to walk it out, not a big deal. That's all there is to removing that. Same technique applies when we go to removing a pump. You're just going to do the opposite. You're going to lift the head up and put that underneath it to start with, and put the adjusting side back in and everything underneath the head. So that's how you get your pipe clamp in and out of there. In this clip, we're going to be showing you what to do and what not to do when pulling a pump. As you can see here, this is a 10-inch Lane & Bowler pump. It's been in the ground for quite a while. Had a lot of buildup they had to clean off of it. They get their dogs on once again. Just like setting a pump, you want to come down to where you're basically touching, and these guys didn't get it down there, and they don't have a lot of weight, but you want to get it within ½ inch of touching your top of your clamp, and then if you have any weight at all, it'll go ahead and sit down on there and get a good bite. So on this particular joint, when they went to thread it, you're going to see here they hook up their chains, safety chains both sides, so you make sure you get it right. This joint did unscrew, But as you see here, this is one thing you really got to pay attention to when you're doing use column pipe, especially on threading it, because what happened here was, as you see, it didn't have a lot of weight sitting on the coupling. Now almost always you've got enough weight and this don't happen, but this is when they only had about 40 foot left to go. That coupling on threads, and the only thing holding your pump up is that clamp, which is not designed to hold your pump up. So you want to make sure it always on threads out of the coupling, not threading the coupling loose. So as you can see, you had to back that up, and now they're threading it out. Another thing I'd like to caution you on is do not lift the pump up while you're threading. You can put tension on it to help lift it up, but you don't want to hold the whole pump up by those last few threads, or you can potentially tear the threads loose and damage your threads. When you're threading with this thing, you can basically max out your torque or your pressure on your motor, your MR or your motor pressure. It's not going to hurt anything on threading. Only time you might want to turn that down would be when you're threading together, just so you don't over torque. The thing you want to keep in mind is these pipe spinners develop way more torque on a 10-inch versus a 2-inch. Obviously your mechanical advantage is much better on a 10-inch than it is on a 2-inch piece of pipe. So you may have to, when you're installing pumps, you may have to adjust pressure back and forth if you're going to do small and big pipe, just depending. But you guys will figure that out once you get to running. In this video clip, we want to demonstrate how some pipe may be too tight for the pipe spinner to actually turn. There comes a point with a pipe spinner that it will not get it out, and there's certainly some pipe that even a hydraulic breakout tong would not remove. Sometimes your only option is cutting it with a torch, but this particular pump was very tight to get apart. As you can see here, we're going to demonstrate some of the techniques to breaking the pipe. One thing a person has to remember with a hydraulic motor is that when they break, they do a better job at a running start. They get more torque. In this here, you can see that the torque that he was putting on that, trying to get a running start, and it still would not break that joint. So sometimes all it takes is just to take a hammer above a coupling. Do not, I repeat, do not hit the coupling if you have a cast coupling and a brake. But sometimes if you just keep the torque, max torque on there, and just tap it a few times, I would say 95% of the time they will come. And as you've seen there, that's what we had to do to make that one work. But it also depends on who installs your pipe and how tight they get them. But if somebody dopes a pipe and they don't get hog wild tightening it, usually you can get them out pretty good with a pipe spinner. And this will conclude our pipe spinner videos. If you have any questions, please give us a call at Sargent Pipe Company, 308-872-6477. Again, my name is Luke Wassum, and I would love to answer any application questions or any technical information you might have about these pipe spinners. Thank you.